constituency. Then on this particular Monday, he went through Kawangware all the way through Naivasha Road to Kibra, which he covered Dagoretti North and Kibra constituency, and slightly again passing through Langata. My projection, which again I repeat is not confirmed, my projection is that Raila Odinga may today decide to take the Embakasi route. Talk about Embakasi East constituency, talk about Embakasi South constituency. These are two constituencies in which Raila Odinga enjoys massive support. Remember, Embakasi East under the representation of Babu Owino in Parliament, and Embakasi South under the representation of Julius Mawathe, both of them under the Azimio la Umoja, Babu Owino ODM and Mawathe Wiper. There is also Embakasi West, which is represented by Mark Mwenji of Jubilee. Much as I saw him amongst the leaders in State House with other Jubilee leaders, those are areas in which traditionally Raila Odinga has been enjoying support. He might also decide to go to Embakasi Central, talk about Kayole and those other areas, because so far we are not sure which route he chooses to take. But just in case he goes those routes, he might again decide to go through Mukuru, which is in Starehe constituency, because Raila Odinga has really faced lots of challenges in terms of accessing the Nairobi CBD. He may decide to take his campaign to those areas of Nairobi, and we will have our eyes on him. However, he might also decide, and I repeat, Zainab, that this is not a program shared by the Raila Odinga team. These are my own projections, owing to how he has been moving the past 2 days of demonstrations. He might also decide to face or bite the bullet and get into the CBD, or go with the ultimate target, which was to access State House, because President William Ruto is back in the country. Remember, last week on Monday, he was not in, and Raila Odinga stated that they had petitions that they needed to present to State House. That was according to that letter by Wycliffe Oparanya to Inspector General of Police Japhet Koome, while informing or notifying the police that they will be conducting demonstrations every Monday and Thursday moving forward. So our eyes on the team just to see what will happen. This particular time, the last demonstrations on Monday, we saw leaders talk of their security officers being withdrawn. That we could not confirm, but that was what was said by a couple of leaders, including Minority Leader in the National Assembly, Opiyo Wandayi, who had actually in the previous week been arrested and arraigned in court. So we keep an eye on all Azimio leaders and what will be happening. We also have our eyes just to know what came out of that meeting between Raila Odinga and the Senator for Delaware from the United States, that is Chris Andrew Coons. Remember, this is the very man who around elections time met Raila Odinga, William Ruto, and then President Uhuru Kenyatta, and it was largely said that he had come to urge them to accept the results as they were, and also the Supreme Court decision of August last year. So Chris Coons yesterday met Raila Odinga. Initially, he met Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. We saw from Rigathi Gachagua's tweet that they were talking about development. However, while speaking to religious leaders drawn from Kibra, Raila Odinga stated that foreign countries should stay away of Kenyan matters. And remember, Raila Odinga said these words only hours to his scheduled meeting with Chris Coons, perhaps an indication that he knew or he could foretell what Chris Coons had on his agenda in his meeting with him. Later on, they met with Raila Odinga here in Nairobi, and the communication that came from Raila Odinga is that he met Chris Coons and that they spoke about several issues, including enhancing democracy, and that they will keep all communications channel available. However, sources are close to Raila Odinga state that these particular demonstrations and what is happening in the country could be part of the agenda that the Senator for Delaware came to bring here in Kenya. Remember, the Senator for Delaware is said to be a close ally of US President Joe Biden, and having personally confirmed, because Chris Coons confirmed in September of 2022 in the website of the US Senate that the elections was part of his assignment when he was here the previous time, then it may not it may actually be true that this particular political situation again could be why Chris Coons was in the country. And after that meeting with Raila Odinga, of course, Raila Odinga having said earlier that maandamanos will be on and that the Western countries should not interfere with what is happening in the country. Remember also that statement, that joint statement from 8 high commissions and embassies here in the country talking about the demonstration situations here, clearly showing that there could be attempts by the outside world to interfere or to try and find signed a truce between the ruling Kenya Kwanza government and the opposition Azimio coalition. Let's see how today goes. Raila Odinga says the struggle is on, so we are also ready to cover it from wherever he will emerge from and to whichever route he decides to take. Zainab.
Ibrahim Karanja for that, and certainly we hope you do stay and remain safe during the coverage of the protests by the opposition. Of course, certainly we'll be looking at what the situation is on the ground, together with the other reporters as well, who will be joining us later on in this broadcast. Prof, the opposition is employing an element of surprise in its strategy during the opposition, and clearly because we already know the stand that the police have taken on this matter, that these demonstrations have been banned, they're illegal, they do not follow the constitution according to them. Is this good for Kenyans, even the security of Kenyans who perhaps who just want to sit down and watch their TVs or listen or watch on social media what is happening, and by surprise you hear that protesters are outside your home? Because some of the reports that we received in Kawangware is that when the opposition supporters and troops started taking effect through Lavington and entered Kawangware, there are a lot of people who were caught off guard at that point, and there was a bit of robbery as well, and people lost their things in the process. So this, what do you make of it? Not very good situation, or is it just a good political strategy?
Well, I think the whole situation is not good, and that is why caution is always advised, especially when you have power. When you have the power, you are the bigger person in the house, because you see what happens when things are allowed to degenerate. Both the president and Raila Odinga can lose control. And then we are really in a very bad situation.
Right.
And that's why peaceful always attempt to sort a problem peacefully before it becomes big. The issue you just discussed on the Kibra and the religion, that worries me. It worries me because I think the people around the president, they need to be brave enough and they advise him against these church appearances. Because the president will go to church with the people in the column behind him, the church people behind him. He will make political pronouncement and other people. That gives the country the impression that those behind him agree with what he says. But those behind him are church people. And the church is supposed to give us alternative voice. Religious, not just the church. I mean,
the relationship between politics and the church has been there for the longest time.
I think now it's taking a dangerous turn. And the dangerous turn is, for example, if you look at the Christian church right now, is divided now in the middle between the Hallelujah and the mainstream. The mainstream society, okay? So that division is emerging and is becoming clear every day. The thing is, the president, when he is making a political statement, he should make them without the church people.
Okay.
Because the society, when it's in trouble, he reaches out to the spiritual people who are supposed to be neutral to provide a solution. But now, but when
isn't that what we're seeing? Isn't that what we're saying?
Well, what you are saying
even
now
with
is
Sheikh
the
Hassan
respect.
Here, who represents the religious side, the Muslims. We've seen these religious leaders come out
other than
strongly.
the Muslims, right. Other than the Muslims, the respect for the religion is diminishing in people's mind. Because you see, the church is fully aligned now, basically. We have to accept that. And that respect is moving. It's only the Muslims now who can speak with an independent voice. But the church, other than the Catholic Church, the Conference of Bishops, the other church will be assumed to speak it now for the government. Because the government has clearly, the other day, one of them said this is a government of God. One of the politicians. Do you remember which one was that? He said, I think that was Kimani actually Chungo. He said, this is a government of God. The constitution in his wisdom separated the church and the state. Because when you mix this, you have no idea where you are ending. So for me, I think it's always better for leaders to calmly sort out problems peacefully before they go out of control, because the danger is both of you can lose that control. And when you lose control now, we don't know where we are. You see, in 2007,
do you feel like we're losing control?
Slowly we couldn't be losing control. That's why you said there were those surprises, and those surprises can be bigger. You know, in 2007, that violence, I was in Nakuru. These young people, the Mungiki, they were coming around collecting money and asking us for money. And because you are afraid, you don't want to be attacked, we actually gave them. You know, there was no police. The police had disappeared. So if we allow this to become a contestation, which it shouldn't, because they have identified which problem they want to address, the opposition, I think the government needs to accept and address. Because maybe these people have better ideas on how to sort this problem, or they don't. Okay. But you can hear them out.
So who would blink faster? Who should come down to, you know, to the table?
I think it is the state, is the president.
Do you feel that that falls?
It is the president who should come first, because he has that the only person who has the responsibility of keeping Kenya in one piece. You know that
because it's a symbol of national unity.
It's the symbol of national unity. He is the one with the responsibility to actually protecting us, not the opposition. So he is the one who should come down. And that's why sometimes now when he makes a categorical statement, you get scared. You know, there is something we never do in Meru. When you have a problem with your wife, your children will come and then give you all sorts of stories. You are supposed to listen and say yes, yes. Never reply. You never reply.
You never take sides.
You never take side, because the moment you reply, you have taken a position. You are now ceased to be the end of that family. Okay. So for me, I think the head of this family is the president.
Look, and I want us to come back and talk about that, the symbol of national unity. We have to take another break on AM Live. We're going to be back in a short while, and we'll continue with this conversation. And of course, the responsibility and the conduct of political leaders and the statements that have been made by those that support and who are very close to these two principles, those remarks, we have to analyze some of those statements. We'll be back in a short while. Stay with us.
Fruity freshness in every sip.
Nenda hospitalini ukapimwe. Ikibainika ya kwamba ni TB, utapewa dawa, na ukimeza vizuri ulivyoshauriwa na daktari, utapona. TB yaweza kuangamiza jamii yako. Usikubali. Matibabu ni bila malipo katika hospitali zote za serikali.
This is The Greatest Show. The London Marathon, 23rd April, live on NTV.
using your oxtail and then you're going to brown it.
Over the years, several men have been considered the epitome of the England footballer. Clean-cut, sporting, fair, and, of course, an excellent player. If there is one term to describe Harry Kane's season to this point, it would simply be record-breaking. Just last month, Kane reached 200 Premier League goals and broke Tottenham's all-time scoring mark, surpassing legendary Jimmy Greaves.
That moment when you start to get back to ordinary, and ordinary feels amazing. Whatever pain you're going through, release starts here.
All right, and welcome back to the conversation. You're watching AM Live on NTV, taking a look at the state of the nation and our rolling coverage on the planned Azimio protests today. We have our reporters on the ground. We'll be joining them just to get a glimpse, a feel of where they are and what the situation looks on the ground. It's a bit quite early. It's 8:37 a.m., but we have a full coverage the whole day just to have a conversation on the same with all our reporters and staff here at the Nation Media Group. All right, we left it at who should extend an olive branch at this point, because we have two principals who have taken quite hardline stances on this matter. You have the opposition leader Raila Odinga, who is also the chief of the Azimio One Kenya Coalition Party, and you have the president on the other hand. And Prof, you mentioned that, you know, he's a symbol of the national unity. Let me get to Dr. Mugesa on this. Then, when we're looking at these leaders, and you know, Prof said it is incumbent that the president should extend the first olive branch. Do you agree with that? So that then, because we need a first step to be able to sort of come up with a resolution to this matter, a ceasefire, then how do we begin to move towards perhaps that step, even if it does not mean handshake, but some sort of dialogue?
I think what I can say is that the opposition leaders mentioned it does not want, you know, the handshake or, you know, a stake in government. But the presidency, as a symbol of national unity, the president can take a step and say, okay, what are the issues that are on the table for the Kenyans to have a conversation? Then create a forum where these issues, you know, can be discussed. Through such an attempt, you can reduce the tensions that are already, you know, building. A failure to listen to what the opposition, for example, is saying is not solving the problem. In fact, it is even escalating the problem. More people are joining, and it's like, you know, it will gain that currency. Kenyans are looking to the president to ensure that this country remains, you know, one.
But you have the president and the Kenya Kwanza administration saying that Raila Odinga is using these issues to arm twist his government, you know, to have him have the handshake, if that's what they're calling it, you know, do the handshake and have him be part of the government. Of course, the opposition says that's not what they want, but then you still have this, you know, the government saying, no, we can't have a conversation with the opposition if their way of doing things is arm twisting us on issues that they do not find genuine in the first place.
What we need to do, you know, to reflect on the issues. First of all, do we have issues among the citizens? The rising cost of living, for example, as one of those issues that are really handy and touching on Wanjiku. We need to sit down. How do we manage the cost of living at the moment? And no, this is the factor, you know, Zainab, that is gaining currency among the population. People are affected. People cannot put food, you know, on the table. Issues and challenges of, you know, climate change and food security are really affecting us. So having that national conversation, and personally I don't believe that the discussion should culminate into sharing, the power. We have a government in place that has been sworn in. We have a president, or he has constituted government, but then coming out and saying, these are the issues that are affecting Kenyans. And this is how I feel as president, we need to address, those issues. The president has to take that, leadership and engage.
When the president took over power, he has been in power over just a little bit more than 6 months now, I think.
Yes.
When he took over power, and I think I've asked this before in this show, he said he found a country in a deplorable situation, and that his agenda was to turn the economic situation of this country. And so you have the opposition who say, look, when you came into power, you promised these things, in 100 days you're going to do this and this and this and this. Some of them have not been able to achieve them yet. But the government says, we need time. On the issue of the cost of living, give us time to be able to put our plans in place to be able to work around these issues. Do you think then it is fair for the opposition to use the issue of the cost of living, to push the government to sort of lower the cost of living immediately? Or is there a deeper agenda on this?
I can say that the economy is not performing the way we anticipated, as a country. And there are several factors. Look at what is happening globally in terms of economic, performance, which also affects, the Kenyan economy. Are we collecting, for example, the taxes to run government to the extent that we anticipated, for instance? The answer is no. What we collect cannot match, for example, the demands or the budgetary requirements of the country. But I also agree with the earlier speakers that we must look for ways of, cutting down, the expenses or expenditures which eat into the very little, for example, that we are collecting as a country. And how can this one be done? We need to relook at government expenditure and look at those priority areas and the non-essentials. We completely scale those ones to be able to recoup the monies that can be able to support our economic growth as a country. But the economy is not performing. Everyone is feeling it. The cost of living is rising. The solution might not come from the demonstrations, but we need to relook at how we fix this particular economy.
I think your question, if I can do it very quickly, is very pertinent, because it lies at the heart of whether this problem can be addressed or not. You are saying, is the opposition unjustified, not in giving the president more time? Okay, that's the question. Now, this, how I look at this, why the opposition may be justified in not in giving the president the time. Because what happened is when Kibaki came in, I look at Kibaki. When Kibaki came in, within 2 months, he found a worse situation. The whole country had finished, the roads were dilapidated. But he never, well, the first 2 months, the banks were already selling money in the streets. The first 2 months, the interest rate had climbed down from over 20-something to nearly 3%. So,
but did he have
what am I saying? What I'm saying is the policy.
Environment to do that?
What I'm saying is the policy. You need to see from day one, the policies which are being proposed, they are actually addressing the problem. But when you look at this government, and I think maybe a lot of people in government can see it, but they are not able to verbalize it to somebody who can give us a solution to the president, his other decisions seem to be deliberately anti-Kenya. Deliberately. You know, I asked one of my students the other day, I asked her that, look, the president wants us to give more time. He says he can't have a handshake. And then, you know, she told me he can't have a handshake. But he is forcing me to pay Kindero. So what problem if he pays Raila? You understand that kind of a question from this youngster. The point is, if you are going to have a budget bigger than Uhuru Kenyatta, you are not addressing the problem of economy. You can't say the economy is, when you have that in budget. If the budget went to 2 trillion, then we can really give you all the time you want.
So there's a bit of an irony in how
there's an irony. You can't employ another layer of an administration that the constitution found irrelevant, even though Uhuru already broke that law. He introduced the assistant ministers, which the constitution is saying they are unnecessary.
Now, the moment chief administrative secretaries?
Chief administrative secretaries. Right. So the moment now you give us 50 of them, or whatever number, it tells us they are not actually interested. The economy is rich. There is enough money to pay these people. So there is also enough money to reduce our food prices. So when the policy don't align,
there's a problem.
There's a problem, and that's why the opposition is not giving any time, because how much time do you really want? Because the point is, if you can't actually, we see significant progress in 6 months, you will not be doing anything in 20 years. Usually, you know, there is something we say in business about you when you give a speech. If you cannot communicate what you are going to say in the first 5 minutes, you will not communicate in 10 hours, even if we were to give you 10 hours. So there is issue. The opposition has a point here, because the policies, when we look at them, they don't seem to be addressing the problem. The problem seems to be allowed to persist.
All right.
And something we're not saying is
yes,
that,
very quickly then we get,
very quickly, something we're not saying, we did not have a change of government. The person in charge right now was the DP for 10 years. The same faces that are in government now are the same faces that we saw in the previous government.
But a deputy president, so the deputy president knows, to say
he knew the economy.
But a deputy president was sidelined.
No. Even if you're sidelined, right? There are some things you know. He knew the performance of the economy. So when he was making these promises, he knew exactly how the economy was. Why was he making these promises?
To be fair with the...
Prof, let me give Sheikh Hassan an opportunity, and then we'll continue. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I think there are two things we are actually, which are intertwined and also a mixture in terms of when we are looking at the leadership of the country. Our system, our parliamentary system actually gives the president to be both the head of state and head of government. And what Kenyans expect now that the president is in place, he should actually now become the head of state and try to delink himself from politics and run the country. Because the problem of wearing the other hat all the time, then it actually makes him to continue politicking, you know, because he feels that he has to protect the government, he has to do this, he has to do that. If he concentrates as the head of state now that he's in office, he'll be able to look at Kenyans as Kenyans, not necessarily as members of certain political party, members of a certain region, but address some key issues in government. What I want to say is that as we are looking at the issues that are being raised at the current conversation, the truth of the matter is the Azimio coalition are quite clever, and they really know how to play the game very well because of how they are packaged their messaging. Originally, the issue of cost of living was not part of the agenda. The cost of living was introduced when they realized that they can't sell that agenda without the cost of living. When they try to test waters, what the feelings of Kenyans, they realize that if you talk about the IEBC, electoral, all kind of stuff, it doesn't concern Kenyans. What concerns Kenyans is the cost of living. So they
touches on the very heart, the very core.
So they pulled that and become an agenda number one. It is good. It's not something bad, because it's always good to hear what people are saying. But if we were to have a constructive engagement for this country, dialogue, that should actually be, in my view, should be initiated by the president, is to look at how do we deal with these issues. In 2007, 2008, when we were in that situation then, what happened is that there were issues that were divided, the issues were divided into four. There are issues of the immediate that were to be addressed immediately, the cease of conflict and other things, all that up to the agenda 4, which is now became a long-term kind of a program. So even now, what we need to look at, if we were to look at these issues, because all of them, in my view, they are genuine. It's only that when do we deal with this particular issue? The issue that should not be spoken about is the legitimacy of the president. I think that one is actually misplaced. That should not be one of the agenda that we need to discuss as a country. Because that suggests that we don't trust the institutions that were established. That we established, we gave to ourselves to manage our country. But issues of the SAFA, we are also confusing. It's not about the opening the SAFA, in my view. It is about how do we manage our elections. Not necessarily the SAFA, because the question that we should be asking ourselves. I remember in the last elections when we had the issue about when we went to Supreme Court and the servers were supposed to be open, we were told the servers, the country that is hosting the server, are sleeping while we are awake here. We have the situation in this year again, when last year when we went to Supreme Court, and it was said, okay, Supreme Court ordered the servers to be opened. But they were the people who are hosting gave some limitations on how far do you go in that server. So, and then the question comes, what did we purchase? What did we procure as a country through IBC? Because we spend a lot of money procuring the server. So what did we buy? And I think that is the question, that's the genuine concern we need to be asking ourselves. Does it mean Kenya as a country cannot host an electoral system on our own? How do we subject our data to a foreign institution that cannot allow us even to access it? And to me, this is the debate that we need to have. Right. How do we ensure the procurement at IBC is done in a transparent manner, that all the players and Kenyans knows what has been bought and how it's going to be used, and it has to be a Kenyan-led, a Kenyan-owned process, so that we are safe on the side. So when you talk about
so you're saying away from this call for opening the servers, the opposition is pushing for, there are much deep-rooted issues
that we need to be dealt
with on the issue of the electoral process
in
this country.
And then on the issue of this now, the cost of living, we need to put, those should be the immediate things that we need to do. And I'm sure no Kenyan will actually raise any concern if we have a big sitting today in Bomas of Kenya and we want to discuss on how we can get out of the problem. Because it is affecting us seriously. We have the education.
Because it happens every election cycle. Every 5 years we find ourselves in this sort of political turmoil.
Absolutely. Today, as we talk rightly here, we have forgotten that our CBC curriculum is not working. The Kenyans have forgotten.
It's actually not working.
It is not working. It has failed. But we are not talking about it. We are forgetting that we have had a drought for the last 4 years, and we have 70% of the land mass of the country being affected. There are Kenyans who have died of hunger, and they have lost their livelihoods. What are we going to do? Now we have the floods in the same areas. What are we doing as a country? We have forgotten, because we are very busy demonstrating in Nairobi and trying to address the political issues and many other issues that we need to be talking as a country. So I think we need to have the conversation, but we have to structure the conversation and divide issues, the political issues aside, and issues that are of social and economic on the other side, and have the Kenyan speak to themselves.
Okay, and we're coming back. I'll start with you, Musamali, in a moment. But we have to take another break, because when we come back, we'll be winding up with our last hour on this show before we hand it over to the Swahili team. So stay with us and talk to us. The hashtag we're using this morning is AM Live. Which way forward? Beyond the barricades is what we're asking. Where do we find that common ground? We'll be back after this break. Stay with us.
Taarifa Teke na e-paper. Stay in the know on the go. Getting the full story Bilangori. To sign up, choose your preferred subscription. Use the promo code SUBZ22 to get 20% off and pay. Get your favorite newspaper and enjoy the truth anywhere, anytime. For inquiries, email epaper@ke.nationmedia.com or call 0790 111 111. Subscribe today and get your Taarifa Teke.
This week on Twende, they say good things come in small packages. What more do you need? We take you to the smallest national park in the 254. we explore this park looking for a goat-like swamp-dwelling antelope, the Sita Tunga.
They submerge themselves and disappear to the weeds.
I get to see some very special birds with help from an expert.
The two are talking. Look, this one is investigating. It's warning this one that don't come near. Don't.
Aliyelala usimwamshe. We quietly walk the forest with primates sleeping in the canopy above.
Of flavor, fruity freshness in every sip.
Over the years, several men have been considered the epitome of the England footballer. Clean-cut, sporting, fair, and, of course, an excellent player. If there is one term to describe Harry Kane's season to this point, it would simply be record-breaking. Just last month, Kane reached 200 Premier League goals and broke Tottenham's all-time scoring mark, surpassing legendary Jimmy Greaves.
That moment when you start to get back to ordinary, and ordinary feels amazing. Whatever pain you're going through, release starts here.
Yo, but true say the sharp got up in the mix, now I'm saying NTV, shout out to you, bro. Keep it locked, hey.
Sauti yako ina sound vizuri kwenye masikio.
I like it. Come to the dance floor, babe.
Angie.
Leo tuna festa fe banga. Festa fe banga. Another banga.
It's just like an amazing mix.
I am happy today. Kama vitu unanilea.
Oh yeah. Inaweka shida chini na tupa mikono juu. Banjuka tu.
No compromise, this the hottest combo.
Unistima, uninare.
On MTV, don't touch that dial. Not yet. Not yet. No, what?
Now this is what we call convergence. Come through for the morning fix this and every single Friday right here on MTV. Yes, it's about that time.
You know, the coolest thing about mornings is that a girl and two guys together in the mix, you never know what to expect. You guys are crazy.
From Friday 6, bring your good vibes, bring your picks. From 7 a.m., it's a dope mix. Every single thing on Friday changes with the morning fix.
As he healed that lady, that woman of 12 years of bleeding, he's here today. The same supernatural healing that took place at this time, today, it is taking place in Jesus' name. Bible says it's the same yesterday. Jesus the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. I prophesy to you. This is your day. This is your hour. This is your moment. Receive your healing in Jesus' name. Can I hear somebody say more fire? Somebody shout it, cheese. Supernatural healing.
All right, and we are back. Thank you so much for staying with us on this rolling coverage of AM Live, focusing on the Azimio protests that have been planned for today by the Azimio leader Raila Odinga together with the larger opposition fraternity. Well, that's what we are touching base on and trying to just understand and make sense of the situation on ground. Musamali, I think I'm going to go back to a conversation we had a little bit earlier on with regard to the way forward. So it appears it's quite clear that almost everybody is calling for this dialogue to happen. But we've had many statements from political leaders from across the divide, right? The chest thumping, the hardliner stances that they've been able to take. What do we expect now to hear? Away from all that, away from all the noise of the political leaders who surround these two principles, what do you expect to hear, especially from these two gentlemen? That is Raila Odinga and the president himself, who's the head of state and a symbol of national unity in this country, President William Ruto.
I think what we expect, especially from the president, is that he should call a truce, call in Raila, they sit down and talk. Because we've seen this chest thumping. This is not the first time we're seeing this kind of action.
Right.
Because I remember when we had Section 2A, we had people taking a hard stand. We had a president who had said that if I remove Section 2A, the country will be divided.
Right.
But when the people were out there on the streets demanding that we want a multi-party system of governance, we want to have parties that will be representing our interests in parliament, Moi decided to appoint a task force and send it around the country picking views from members of the public. And when the task force came back, it said, we've talked to the people and the people are saying that Section 2A should remain. But Moi felt the pulse of the country. He saw the country was headed in the wrong direction. What did he decide to do? As a leader, he said, I've decided to repeal Section 2A. And all the war drums went quiet. People went back now to the drawing board. People started forming parties. And then there was that Tower of Babel amongst the parties. They started cannibalizing each other. And Moi remained in power. So I think what we should look at here is take that example. Because right now the country is hurting. And when we have people like the deputy president, we have people like Kimani Ichung'wah standing up and saying there is no Nusumukate, yet the opposition is saying we are not interested in Nusumukate. They have given a guideline of what they want addressed. So as Professor said, there are things that are agreeable there, things that are doable.
So what
why can't they come together, sit down and say, yes, you've given us this list, but let us remove this, let us remove this, let us discuss this and agree on the way to take the country forward. Because as we are looking at some point, both parties will lose control of the people. And it's going to happen. And when that happens, then we will not have a country to talk about.
Right.
Let us be very clear about that. Because we have got youth that are feeling like the heat of the economy right now. Unemployment is there. Parents are failing to pay school fees. You will find a parent who has taken children up to university level. He's still feeding them. He's still dressing them. He's still housing them. Is that what we want for our country? I don't think so. And if these are the issues that are being put on the table by the opposition, so be it. Let us sit down and agree. What can be done should be done now, not tomorrow. Because the country is really hurting.
But my question still remains, we're here in a place where it's between a wall and a hard place, and the two leaders are not seeing eye to eye at this point. And it's clear that from what we're hearing is that the president should be the one to sort of extend that olive branch. But that is really unlikely to happen, is it, Prof?
No, it will happen because the president needs to provide leadership. We need leadership from both, but the president carries a higher responsibility.
He does.
He carries a higher responsibility than the opposition.
Right. So certainly that is something that then likely will happen.
It will have to happen.
But at the end of it all, we're still counting a lot of losses at this point, right? Doc, I mean, when we're looking at, let me go back to that Northlands City rampage that we saw on Monday. As, you know, we saw people moving away with livestock from that farm. You could see them selling it to motorists who were parked outside there. for 2,000 shillings, I hear, reportedly 1,000 shillings per ship. Does that speak of the values that we have as Kenyans? Because just away from the politics of it, away from the fact that this farm belonged to the family of the former president. But this is, you're saying Kenyans who, in an organized way, have entered into someone's property, with private property, and have stolen. And as they're moving, you have Kenyans who are willing to buy the stolen goods. So I'm asking, does it speak of the values that we hold, or would that be an unfair charge?
Our constitution provides for the right to own property anywhere. And looking at that particular act, and especially those who are buying, I might give them a benefit of doubt to the extent that here, we normally buy things, along the road.
So we take advantage
anywhere.
But isn't it weird? I mean, Doc, when you know a ship will not cost less than.
Let me raise the point. Let me make the point. We normally buy things along the road.
Vegetables.
And the reason why I'm saying I may give them a benefit of doubt is that here are people along the road. You don't know where they have gotten the ship from unless they interrogated them. But what was wrong is the question of, you are giving me at 500 a goat or a sheep. Then I would ask, why is it costing this when I know in the market rate is between 7,000 to 10,000? It boils down to the whole question of the value structure of our society. I think as Kenyans, we have lost the values. We don't have respect, for example, for each other. We don't have respect for other people's property. That's why you would see the kind of destruction that we are actually seeing. The other day we saw in media that businessman in Kibra who lost 13-point-something million. His hardware was raised down. It is the value system. And where should we begin? Our value system should begin right as the child is growing. What are we teaching our children, for example, in our homes, to respect other people and respect property? What are we teaching them in our schools? In terms of the values. Look at the entire societal structure. Where have we lost it? You are even seeing families rising against each other, killings even within the families. So Kenyans must really look at their cultural issues, their value structures, and then we go back to the respect for the same.
All right.
And unfortunately, I know I shouldn't intervene here, but I think that question should not be lost, because it really has some bigger significance. This is how revolutions start. Revolutions start by people withdrawing respect from the leaders. If you listen to the clips in social media, you can see what the citizens are saying about their president. Revolutions start when there is a breakdown of law and order. Revolutions start when there is a clear weakening of institutions of governance, and therefore it becomes legit to replace them. So what we are seeing is the beginning, is the first shots towards a full-blown revolution in this country. Now, the thing is, the political class has acted total disregard of the public, and in my opinion, the revolution was still going to come. Maybe it was going to take another 20 years, but I think we have brought it closer to 10. It may not be this year or next year, but if the trend continues, it is coming.
But still, with this revolution that you're speaking of, that is inevitable in years to come, perhaps in the country. But at the end of it all, don't you feel like perhaps the opposition, according to, when I look at some of the statements made by Kenyans on social media, that the genuineness of the opposition has been, brought to the spotlight? That are they really genuine? Can you really state that these are the clear intentions of the opposition?
Exactly. I mean that, you see, you withdraw respect from all the leaders because you don't trust them. All of them, they have all these huge weaknesses. This is why I'm saying the big picture is we are cooking a revolution right now, and the clever people should nip it in the bud by agreeing and negotiating. You see why the British monarchy was never overthrown when most of the European monarchies was overthrown? Because they always gave in. They always gave in. The Magna Carta. If it was not debated and adopted, that king was going to be overthrown. And the British now will be a republic if that didn't happen. So what we are saying here is that the government need to realize there is a danger in the horizon, because people are losing trust on both. You see, the handshake of 2018 left the people dry. Raila disappointed so many people. Okay, so people have that in their mind as they listen to him right now.
There's suddenly some level of doubt in things that he said. Yes,
maybe just to
we'll
jump
come back to the value issue.
Yes,
right.
yeah, but allow me to jump also to that conversation about if we are staring at a revolution or an uprising, whatever you want to call. It is actually true. I think we are in trouble as a country. This country is not short of intelligent people. But what had happened to them? Where have they gone? We are not seeing them in the place. We are not seeing them in parliament. We are not seeing them in government. Where are they? You know, the resource, the huge resource, a human resource that this country have, where are they? Because today, we could not be talking about these issues if we have a functional parliament. Exactly. We are talking because the parliament is not functioning. We have county, what do you call those? Executive and the county assemblies. Yes. Where are they? Where are the county assemblies? What is their contribution to this conversation? Where is the Council of Governors in the whole conversation about what we are doing? What about the Senate? We have also created a very, very weak civil service. Because today, civil service is being rotationally recruited every government comes into power. What that means, it means that you only have a contract for 4 years before you are shown the door, depending on who comes to the leadership. Do you think they're going to serve the interest of the one? Do you think that those people are going to perform in the offices? They are not going to perform. So if we are recycling the human resources that we have developed over time at the national level and the county level, then we are actually creating a country that has a lot of disillusionment, and that will lead to a crisis. We are talking about...
so then it's a systemic issue.
Yes, it is. Which has been created over time. Because at no time we have ever seen a proper government in place that we can actually celebrate as a country and say, this is what we have given to ourselves. The only sampleness that everyone else is celebrating because of the economic aspect of it is the Kibaki administration. But the rest are actually government that have been there, they have just passed by, but we cannot see any marks that they have left behind. So I think what we need to
Is it something we inherited when we got our independence? We had structures under the British colonial rule.
Zainab, I do not want to go to that route.
Because our government have always been exploitative. You see, the foreign government was exploitative. This one came is exploitative.
Yeah.
So it has never been a government of Kenya, of the people of Kenya. Yes. It has always come with an exploitative streak. And that's why I'm saying that we are definitely in trouble unless this thing is arrested in time.
Yeah,
we are looking at a revolution.
When we look at that way, actually we can say we are not yet independent. Because arguments have always been given forward by scholars that we only have change of colors on who came into leadership. But in terms of what do we represent as a country, we have just represented interests of elites, the minority of the people of our population. That is the interest that we are always protecting. We are crying today loudly. I'm not saying there is anything wrong if we castigate what happened with the Northlands. We have to castigate as a country. But suppose it was my farm. Will it even attract any
it won't be in the news.
It wouldn't be in the news, but because it is that level of leadership, the elites, then it's now hell has broken loose, that we are talking about it. I think we have a problem. The sooner we accept that we have a problem and come to the table, we have a problem in this country, may it go to a direction that none of us will be able to change. For example, today President Ruto, I'm sure he will have a lot of challenges convincing his team that he wants to talk to Raila Odinga. He will have a lot of problems because he is a victim of the handshake himself. So his team will not want them to be left behind because of the victim mentality now that has developed within the political class.
They are eating, they don't want competition in the
other side, Raila Odinga also he is also a slave of his own clique, because he have had experience where he sneaked to Arambe House, have a handshake with the former president, and walked through the corridors of Arambe House and took a picture. So the people who are with him did not know what had happened. And they did not get what. So those people will not want
distrust.
Exactly. So those people will not want him to. They will want to let him go. So both of them are hostages. The reason why we are saying the only person now that we are looking at as a country is the president. And I hope the president will be as bold as he was when he was actually elected. Yes. When he was elected, immediately was elected, he made a telephone call to Raila Odinga, which was something very good. I wish he will do the same now. I hope he will land in the country and make the similar call he made to Raila Odinga and tell him, my elder brother, can we have a cup of tea? And try to discuss these issues and isolate what we can do now and what we can actually let Kenyans deliberate.
Right.
I think we are going to heal this problem. But if we are looking at the international, our friends, there is no free lunch. You become a captive of wherever who comes to intervene.
Right.
Nobody will actually come here for free. You know, so we have to be careful on where we want to go as a country, because there is nothing for free.
You touched on something very interesting as you were winding up on the issue of having, if it appears that we were in a sort of difficult position, we had the international community that is coming up. The other day, Raila Odinga mentioned that it was unfair that despite whatever was happening in the country, the international community was quiet. And just as we had from the US delegation that is here and the AU Commission as well, which made a statement, yesterday he said, look, we do not want any interference from the international community. And I'm going to read out a tweet. So I don't know where you stand on this matter.
I will tell you where they stand.
PLO Lumumba tweeted about a few minutes ago, said, then, and he was quoting the Taifa Leo newspaper, which said, Mjumbe wa handisheki atua Kenya, which was attributed to the senator from the US. And he said, then we wonder why the white man has contempt for Africans. We should solve our issues without being cajoled by foreigners. But are we able to solve our own issues?
Yeah, I think the problem we have is actually the level of mistrust. The only institution that was left some few months ago being trusted was the religious sector. Unfortunately, soon after the president was sworn in, there was another survey that was done to try to gauge who does the Kenyan trust. The trust of the religious leaders actually came down. It was not where it was before elections. And that means, and we want to attribute to what Professor earlier discussed about, talked about the use of religious institutions for political interests. Now that when we have religious leaders talking, everyone else is telling us, please allow us to deal with these issues.
We'll deal with our own
matters. Forget about these issues. We are going to deal with it. So who then do we expect as a country to come and mediate on our issues? It is only ourselves. So we need to start building that trust. And again, we are going to push it to the president. It is the only person now who can be able to.
All right.
To do
you see, the Americans are known to supporting dictators because America is about personal American interest. And he said very well, he said there is no free lunch. Americans, they look at their interests and nothing else. They don't care about you. I think this is a song Moi sang for a long time and Moi was right. So you have to be very careful when Americans get interested in you. Because they supported Mobutu Sese, they supported all the dictators in Africa.
Well,
through and through. So when you see the Americans coming, the opposition may handle the position. I agree that we rather be left alone to sort out our problem, and we have good leaders. Good peaceable. We have leader. We can ask the Conference of Catholic Bishops and the Muslim community to intervene, because those ones we still have respect for them. They have not commercialized their institutions.
So is it a wait and see now? Is it perhaps just waiting and see?
Yes.
Okay. Look, we have to take another break, and we will be coming back to continue with this conversation. But when we come back, Mr. Mali, I wanted to also look at this issue that has come up as well. There has been talk of organized militia being used for political expediency. That's something that I think we should be able to look at, and how that really threatens our security as a nation as well. So we're going to have a conversation on that as we wind up, and just trying to put the solutions on the table. And who will blink first? We'll have to wait and see. We're going to be back in a short while. The hashtag is AMLiveNTV.
Otis, kijana yangu achana na wasichana. Mama, wasichana gani jameni? Si mimi na Google formula. Nimekuona uko kwa Instagram. Sikuwa IG, nilikuwa na Google. Google gani imejaa wasichana hivyo? Otis, dunia mbaya, wachana na hao wasichana. Ai, wasichana gani mama? Ukitaka bibi siku moja, enda kwa kanisa. Wachana na hii wasichana ya Instagram na TikTok. Hata sina Instagram na TikTok. Mwanamke ni roho. Ai, tena si dada alisema ni tabia. Sasa dad ni mwanamke. Si wacha nikwambie, mimi ndo najua mwanamke ni roho. Mama, sikuwa naangalia mwanamke kwa Google. Nyamaza nikwambie. Walisema mke mwema anatoka kwa Bwana. Unatoka unaenda wapi? Mke mwema anabaki kwa Bwana.
To get relationship advice by Mama Otis, dial *811*930#. Skiza Nation.
It's been quite a journey from starting from the SME space and navigating my way into the corporate sector. As a woman, I've had instances where I have to compete with men, so I have to have double the information, double the preparation, double the quality of information that I give to customers, because at first they look at you and the customers, you know, there's the stereotyping, whether can you really serve them, can you give them the solutions they're looking for. So I've had to read double than my male counterparts. I've had to research, I've had to consult much more to make sure that I have quality information that customers can trust, that I can give the solutions they're looking for. This year's theme, equity, stands out a lot because women are not fighting for equality. Women are fighting for a chance to sit at the table, just like the men, where we get equal opportunity in terms of jobs, in terms of businesses, in terms of just creating and innovating.
Open your eyes, Diego. What more can you expect from a girl like her if her mother is a drug trafficker?
Why don't you just...
You stay out of this!
You just won the lottery for having seen me.
Why do you say that?
Because I'm going to pay for your silence. How much is it?
How dare you do such a thing?
How much? Think about all the things you're going to be able to get. Clothes, perfumes, luxuries that you can't give yourself.
Now tell me, when did you touch the drug packages to get your fingerprints on them? Because you never did it in front of me?
I didn't!
Head over heels.
To protect our family from germs that cause illness when it's cold, we use Dettol soap.
Dettol soap with germ defense gives you protection. When it's cold, germs are transferred in different ways, and Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol.
Yo, Butruse K, the sharp god up in the mix. Now I'm saying NTV, shout out to you, bro. Keep it locked. Hey.
Sauti yako ina sound vizuri kwenye masikio.
I like it. Come to the dance floor, babe.
Angie.
Leo tuna festa fe banga.
Festa fe banga. It's just like an amazing mix.
I am happy today. Sing for my victory, nani there?
Oh yeah. Inaweka shida chini na tupa mikono juu. Banjuka tu.
No compromise, this the hottest combo.
Unistima, uninane.
Mix on NTV. Don't touch that dial. Not yet. No aguante.
NTV, turning on your world.
All right, thank you for staying with us on rolling coverage of the protests that have been planned by the opposition. We're almost winding up on our conversation this morning with my panelists this morning. But Musamali, from a security perspective, there has been concern that there has been a rise on organized militias being used by politicians to push, their agendas. I don't know if this is something you are aware of, and what does it mean for us as a country when we're taking stock of our security as a nation?
Zainab, the militia have always been there, but they've been operating quietly. And militia have always been in control, under the control of these politicians. And they've been used selectively, depending on the situation. But this is the first time now that we're seeing politicians using militia openly. Because if you see what happened in Northlands, that was a militia that was unleashed purposely to go and make that, go and destroy property and steal the sheep from that farm. And if you look at even North Rift.
So that's an organized gang.
That is an organized gang.
That is used for some certain agenda,
it's
not necessarily political, but it could be any agenda,
remember
right?
2007.
Right.
2007-08, we had the Mungiki. And the Mungiki was also a creation of the politicians because they were supposed to serve a certain narrative. And when it got to a point now when they were needed out there, they were ferried openly. And people could see, yes, we are being told the Mungikis are here. Even right now as we speak, people in Kisumu are being told Mungiki have been brought. So they are being used openly. And that clearly
it's unfortunate because then it actually affects the common Mwananchi who is out there going about their lives. And when such protests happen, like in Kibera, as our reporters went to cover the situation there were, groups of, young men who had machetes and all those things. So then, but these people, the protesters themselves said they distanced themselves from the people who were holding the weapons. So then, would you classify this as well just gangs or just people who want to rob people and take advantage of the situation?
Those are the gangs. Those are the gangs because they were sent there to serve a certain purpose. And remember, this is dangerous because at some point, these gangs will have a life of their own. The people that are controlling them, when they leave them, then these people become a criminal group. And this is exactly the danger that we are facing right now as a country. And you see, they will come in and say, we are coming in as, for example, the Nairobi business community. Was that really a business community?
That was just a code name for Mungiki.
That was a code name for Mungiki. And remember, these
we cannot establish that because we actually do have Nairobi business community who are actually advocating for the interests of their businesses.
So
here in Nairobi.
those business community people then used a militia.
The business community and the commerce there's a business organization that puts all Nairobi business together. It's called
an umbrella. We will get that name. Yes, you can maybe somebody can wind up.
So what we are saying is that it shows that there is a clear breakdown of law and order, and the institution that is supposed to protect Kenyans is failing to do that. So what is the alternative? Because if we as a community feel like a militia has been unleashed on us, then we form a counter militia. Yeah?
Which is not a situation we would...
Which is not a situation we would
want to be
So
in.
Basically, what we are calling out here is the police to be on top of the game.
Right.
We want to see heads rolling. We want to see people that invaded Northlands arrested. We want people that destroyed property at Spectra arrested and arraigned in court. We want convictions.
Accountability on some of these issues, right.
The Inspector General of Police meekly said, we'll do investigations and arrest people. Is that what we expect?
How do you do an investigation with the people captured on the camera?
Or how do you do investigation with people captured on camera? I'm also told that, reliably told, that the people that carried out an attack at Spectra, some of them were arrested. And they were telling the police, no, look here, we are on your side, we are trying to defend you. How? And take it to the bank, they were released on orders.
We don't know that, but that's information you're telling us, right?
So how does that happen in a civilized society?
Okay.
I mean, if we can let it continue the way it is right now, then each and every other person will form his own militia to protect his own personal interests.
I remember the name is Chamber of Commerce. and industry.
Okay.
That is the legit Nairobi business community. Any other branch, you have to be very suspicious.
But Prof, you cannot disregard those who do not perhaps or are members of the Nairobi Chambers of Commerce, because then you have these small-scale traders who have their own, groupings.
And is registered by the government?
I cannot answer that because I have not been able to confirm, but yes.
What we are saying, we should be careful when we are dealing with the unofficial groups, because you see, we have the state, and the state institutions need to function. That's what we are saying. That's what will protect this country. Is state institutions that are identified by law, which are known by law to function and protect us.
All right. Okay. Let me get Doc here on this, the impact on human rights when we're talking about this, the security situation.
Yes, I agree with the other panelists that, those illegal gangs have been there as long as we can remember our history. But the question is, how do they come up? Who finances them? How do they mobilize? We have even seen outside what we are witnessing now, where they have been mobilized for political reasons.
Right.
Even during the election period, you would see some candidates having very undefined kind of groups. So I confirm, yes, they have been there. We have even seen they have been prescribed in some government pronouncements earlier on. But when you have this, then it tells you that as a country, as a government, where are we placing Article 29, which is specifically on freedom and the security of the person?
Right.
Who is in charge? It is the National Police Service who are in charge of security, and therefore they should come out and protect the people. How does this affect rights? It affects rights across board. For example, if somebody dies in the hands of these criminal gangs, the right to life then is threatened. If you cannot move from here, for example, and go to Kawangware, your freedom of movement has already been hampered. So if children, for example, today in Kibra cannot go to school for fear, example, of being attacked, then you are talking about the right to education. If somebody is seeking medical attention right now and they cannot access the nearest medical facility, then their right to health is already compromised. So the presence of such gangs, Zainabu, affects the entire spectrum of human rights, depending on the angle that you are approaching them.
Right. And the reason why I raised that question is because the evidence or the assertions that these groups exist and are active in some areas has come out from statements also made by leaders that represent us. And we are in a time of a political upheaval, and I think it's important to be aware of the situation that we're in as a country and be able to understand where we are and why things happen the way they happen. When you meet a group of people with machetes and you wonder, where is this? When the opposition says we have peaceful protests, but that is certainly far from being peaceful protests, right? So Sheikh Hassan, as we move forward, because I want us to now just take a look at the solutions that we have on the table. Certainly a lot of dialogue that we've talked about, and I'm going to take a link from one of our political reporters, but when we come back, I want us to wind up on the advice that we must put on the table as leaders, as stakeholders, as Kenyans in this country. What is the first thing that we should be able to look at? What is the first thing that we should be able to address? And not just address from the two principles, but also Kenyans. What is it that we need to have our focus on? Vincent Oduor is our political affairs reporter. He is in Kibra right now. It is one of the places that we have our eyes on, our focus on. Vincent, good to see you. A very good morning to you. I hope you're safe right now. Maybe just give us an assessment of how it looks in Kibra this morning as, of course, we wait to see how the planned protests will take place.
Absolutely, this morning Kibra constituency, especially Kibra slum, is uncharacteristically calm, cool and collected compared to last Monday at such an hour. But I have patrolled a number of streets and a number of areas across the 5 wards here in Kibra constituency. And one thing I've realized, most of the shops, or at least you can just say no business people or small scale traders have opened their business this morning, because last Monday a number of businesses were opened, but today I've crisscrossed across the 5 wards and all the shops where I've passed were closed, and therefore most people have feared to open their businesses this morning, especially in areas around Makina Mosque, areas around Karanja, where we experienced last week, or we experienced some clashes, and a number of businesses were burnt down, and therefore today no business person wants to risk the safety of their stock this morning. But having used other roads around Kibra, especially Kibra slums, where we witnessed a high deployment of police officers last Monday, today there are no police officers in those areas, and especially when you get to certain junctions around Kibra slum where police officers were strategically placed on Monday, today they are not there, and that basically has given residents some hope that this morning or today they will maybe likely experience some kind of peace without any incidents around this area. So right now here I'm at DC, the famous DC grounds, and this is basically one of the major entrances into Kibra constituency. And this place, most people will tell you, or when you talk to people, a number of residents I've talked to, some of them still tell me now it is still early, and therefore you can't conclusively conclude that Kibra slums especially will be peaceful during the day. But this is something we are still monitoring, because Kibra constituency is a key political ground for Azimio leader Raila Odinga, and this place is Odinga's political stronghold, famously known as Odinga's political bedroom here in Nairobi County. And that is largely because Raila Odinga used to represent Kibra constituency in the National Assembly in Parliament. Those days there was only one parliament in Parliament, when Kibra constituency used to be in Langata constituency, where Odinga was the member of Parliament for at least 20 years. And therefore this is a very critical political constituency for Azimio leader Raila Odinga, and it has always been his base when it comes to marshalling and mobilizing support, especially in Nairobi County, to be able to push his agenda, his political agenda, or basically to play a big role in opposition politics. And therefore this is a place where you can't write it off, and it's a place that we have to continue monitoring during the day. But today I've also passed by Olympic bus station, where on Monday, that's where everything began. And today, so far, I haven't seen any group of youth trying to light bonfires around, and the place today is still peaceful. So far, it is still peaceful, and the public service vehicles are there, and the normal public transport activities right now are going on around areas from Olympic and areas around 42, and also areas around a place called around just Makina area. And this is something that we will continue monitoring and see how it's going to pan out today. But so far, business is going on as usual here in Kibra slum. That is it for now. I'm taking you back to studio.
Right. All right, thank you, Vincent Odwor, who is keeping tabs and assessing the situation there in Kibra, that's in Nairobi. And of course, he says that things look as normal right now. But remember, even within the last 2 protests that we saw right around this time, things were okay, things were normal, business was usual. But when things started getting heated up, when we saw Raila Odinga out on the streets, things got a little bit tense at that point. Okay, so but we will certainly be giving you an update on the situation and keeping tabs with exactly how things unfold during the course of the day. Now, what I've gotten from you gentlemen is that one of the issues, of course, we've talked about is the issue of responsibility, and that you've said that there should be responsibility in the conduct of this protest by both the security officials as well as the protesters and the organizers of the protesters. And also the very forefront, of course, with Doc here is the issue of human rights, which should be at the heart of, you know, all protests. And let me begin with you, Sheikh Hassan. As we move forward, everyone is talking about dialogue. Everyone is talking about the olive branch. Everybody is talking about having a sit down and sort of ceasefire, bringing this ceasefire to an end. And what is your one key advice, at least to Kenyans across the country, and especially the political leadership in this country as we move forward? Yes, let the president put forth his hand, but then what is that one thing that we need to do? What's your key advice?
I have three issues. Number one is actually to call upon the leadership of Azimio to call off demonstrations. The Muslim community in this country have made several appeals that we wanted a peaceful Ramadan, where Muslims can be able to enjoy their fast without interruptions. And unfortunately, on Monday, we saw it happen in Kibra, where the local Muslim community could not do their night prayers in that mosque because it was banned. They could not even break their fast because there was skirmishes all over. Up to around 9, so people were fasting. And I ended up actually struggling to put off fires and running up and down with tear gas and kind of stuff without eating the whole day, you know, and then those are the things we were afraid of. So at least for the respect of this holy month of Ramadan, Azimio coalition, if they are not interested to call off demonstration, at least for this, let them call off this demonstration. But more importantly, going forward, the calling off of demonstration will give an opportunity for alternative avenues to arrive to address the issues that they are raising. The second request I will actually make is to the President of the Republic of Kenya, is to open the doors of dialogue, because he's the only person with the key for us to have this conversation around these issues. To my fellow citizens, Kenyans, we have a responsibility that we need to understand that what is under contestation is actually not our issues. They are basically interests of others. But we are being made to be those people who are being used for certain people to achieve their objectives. We should not fall into the trap, because we are losing lives. You know, the people who are dying are ordinary citizens. The people who are losing an income are ordinary citizens. The people who cannot feed one another are ordinary citizens. The leaders of all the groups, either opposition or government, are not in the same position that we are. They are not living hungry. Their children are basically pursuing international curriculum. They are not even doing CBC in the schools that we send our children. So I think we have a bigger burden that we are carrying as ordinary Kenyans. The only way is for us to liberate ourselves, to reject to be used by any of the two groups, and stand on our own, but pursue what we think is of interest to all of us and to the nation, so that we don't become victims that are being carried away from this side and this side. You can actually take note that for today, we have seen the so-called hustlers are now basically on the side of Raila Odinga, because they are easily mobilized. The people who are perceived before to be on the side of Raila Odinga, the so-called dynasties, or the middle class, or those who have something to eat, are now on the side of government, which means we are there. We are not achieving anything. So even if they come to the table, we are still going to lose. So I think we need just to stand firm and make them think the way we want them to do. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Mogesa, your key takeaway and key advice as we move forward, and of course as we continue doing your investigations with regard to some of the incidences that we've seen, now that probably in a couple of hours we shall be seeing another round of protests happening in the country, then what next?
First of all, let me say that the citizens and everybody should exercise their rights with responsibilities. That is my appeal. As we exercise our rights, let us also remember that we have responsibilities as well. With this understanding, then we shouldn't be seeing the kind of destructions to property and loss of life that we are seeing. I don't want to re-echo what Sheikh has already said. The key to this impasse lies with the president and the opposition leader, Raila Odinga. If you allow me also, let us reflect as a country, as a people, on our national values and principles of governance, and also let us work towards building, that national cohesion and integration. I find this very, very key. If we addressed this as a people, if we nurtured our value system as a people, then we are going to make a difference. Allow me to make one point probably outside this and say that in as much as we are going through this, especially in the major cities, let us not forget, the other Kenyans, for example, in the very remote areas, of this country, and specifically in the Asal, semi-arid, areas, where the impact of climate change and food security right now is the major concern, of those people. Can we also go back and see, we have suffered the drought, and now the rains are back, and unfortunately, again, those counties are suffering, the flash floods. We have seen livestock dying. We have seen actually people, dying. Can also this, be part of the national conversation that we have so that we fix the challenge of our people in northern Kenya specifically.
All right. So you speak of the issue of priorities.
Priorities, yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
I'll get to you, Prof, in a moment. I just want us to link up as well with Ngina Kirori, who is our crimes and investigations reporter as well, who is just taking stock of the situation around the Central Business District, right outside Nation Center, and the adjacent streets outside there. Ngina, a very good morning to you. Good to see you. Just give us a sense of what you're witnessing this morning. How's the situation? Quite chilly, I believe.
Right, good morning to you, Zainab. It's the first Thursday of what has been the series of the Maandamano protests. If you do recall, ODM leader Raila Odinga had called for the protests every Monday and Thursday, and that has had quite an effect on what the businesses in the CBD are looking like, as well as, the presence of people who are filtering into the town, as well as police presence. And we are situated just near the Jivanji Gardens, which is quite a contentious area in regards to the ODM party. We are noting that there's quite a lot of police presence that's around here. We've seen about 2 police lorries here, as well as some of the anti-riot police and AP police officers who are stationed here, perhaps just waiting and stationed in case of anything, after the notice had been issued by ODM leader Raila Odinga and the ODM party and the Azimio la Umoja coalition, stating that they will be holding the protests today. We've also counted a couple of other roadblocks across the CBD, Kenyatta Avenue, Juja Road, Eastleigh area, as well as Moy Avenue, Tomboya, and other areas which we've seen quite a lot of police officers who are filtering into the town in lorries, on foot, some on horseback. And another thing we've also noted about the CBD at this time is the businesses. So in comparison to Monday, most businesses have actually opened today, and most matatus have been providing public transport for those wishing to come to the CBD. That's something that has improved today. However, most businesses, as you're seeing, are sort of half open, half closed. If my colleague could just pan to the right a bit, we'll see that there are more businesses on the right that have also been closed, and that's brought in a bit of questions as to how the economy will be able to handle these protests during the week. But that's the situation as of right now here at Nairobi CBD. We'll also be going to the outskirts of the CBD to also look at what that's looking like, as well as Thika Road and other areas, to be able to ensure that we get a wholesome view of what's going to be taking place today and how that's going to be looking like with regards to residents, the police presence, and other issues taking place. So that's what's happening right now. I'm going to hand it back to you in studio.
Thank you, Ngina Kirori, for that. We'll certainly be looking forward to hearing an update on the situation as we continue to rove around the Central Business District to see exactly what is happening. And as also the time passes, we will also be linking up with Ngina later on to get more details. Thank you, Ngina, and stay safe, like I told Ibrahim and Vincent as well. All right, Prof, you've seen from what Ngina says, this is Thursday, Monday, the same businesses were closed. Today we have Thursday, the same businesses were closed. There's a huge economic impact on this. Twice a week is not an easy affair. We had the governor of Nairobi, Johnson Sakaja, attribute to how really the impact has been. But is it sustainable with this opposition that the protest that the opposition is really pushing for? Is it sustainable for us? Because it is the common man who is really hurting. You have the middle class people, well, some argue they work from home. It's a bit easy, a bit different. But then you still have the hawkers, the people who have businesses here. They're hurting the most. Do you believe that?
I think even the middle class is hurting because when the country hurts, everybody hurts.
And they have businesses too anyway.
So they're also hurting. And I don't think this is worth it.
Right.
So what we're asking is leadership from the government and from the opposition to stop this so that we can have our normal lives back. I think that is very important for the people of Kenya. And I would like those in government who said, I hear them saying that this thing is a Luo affair, it's in just Kibera and Kisumu.
Right.
They don't understand when you sat down in Nairobi, you sat down in the 47 counties.
It has a ripple effect on the entire nation.
Because Nairobi feeds the rest of the counties. People come here in the morning, they buy their goons, they ferry them to Nakuru, they ferry them to Meru, ferry them to Kisumu. So it is the distribution center for the country. So they need to have a mind that when Nairobi is not working, the country is actually not working. So they need to provide us leadership, give us peace. They need to see the humiliation people go through in exile. Please don't take us there. Just talk, because we really, like that student is saying, if we are going to pay for 50 rich people, because none of the 50 assistant ministers is really poor, who needs a job because they lost an election, we can also pay Raila in his handshake and we won't bother as long as we get our peace. So we want is the peace, and so that we don't have to think about migrating to other countries. We want to preserve this one.
Right.
So leadership, we need it from both sides.
Right. Nasamali, your words of advice, perhaps what we should be able to put into consideration moving forward. As in the next couple of hours, we will be seeing hopefully something a little bit different from what we saw last weekend on Monday as well.
Zainab, we are all talking leadership, leadership, leadership. And whatever is happening, whatever has happened on Monday, whatever is happening today is actually going to compromise national security. Let us look at it from the security angle. What are the dangers? What are the red flags that we are seeing? And as Professor here rightly put it, these are an indication of a revolution. Do you want to get there?
But we have solutions. We
have solutions. That's why I was saying, let the opposition, let the government come together, sit down and talk and compromise and agree. Because if we go, if we go the revolution way, then we are going to have trouble. Look at what is happening in Southern Sudan, for example. People are not having peace. People are not seeing peace. Look at what happened in Somalia from 1990 to date. They have never recovered. They have never recovered. So you go down, recovery is actually a difficult task. But we can correct it now. And the only way to do this is compromising. Not taking a hard stand and saying we don't want handshake, we don't want what, we are not sitting down and talking. No. Because at the end of the day, these are people who can be able to fly out of this country. They have passports. But what about the majority of us? We will remain here and suffer. So let Kenya be bigger than us.
And certainly this is a test of our very own democracy in this country. But what I noticed is, for the better part of last week and this week, we've seen people compare how the protests have been handled here and how the protests were done in South Africa. So in South Africa, we have the opposition leader there who led the protest there, and it was quite different. There was a very organized and large crowds and captured the attention of many. But when we look at our situation, it was very different. Then where do we come to a position where the right to picket and express, people's own opinion is, it's enshrined in the Constitution. but it is protected within those rights and also in a peaceful manner, so that Kenyans, if today you have the protests led by Raila Odinga happening in Kileleshwa, someone in the CBD continues with their work. Right.
Exactly.
So then how do we get there?
You see, Zainab, what we did, we read the Riot Act even before the demonstrations started.
Right.
We outlawed them even before they kicked off. So basically, people will look for a way of achieving their end, and that's exactly what we're witnessing. In South Africa, people are allowed to protest. Guidelines were given, and they were so peaceful. Yeah? But here, you tell me I've banned, and I know my constitutional right is I'm allowed to protest.
Is that a test of our own democracy?
We are too confrontational. We want to solve political problem using
the police.
The law.
The law. I'm not using the law. Using the law is very good.
Yeah.
But we want to solve it using force.
Right.
A political problem and the force don't mix. Even in the northern, not the rift issue.
Yeah.
That is a political problem. It's not a military one. That's why the military is not able to solve it.
Yes.
Because we need to use soft skills to deal more with our problem than the mind. The mind actually never works. It only creates damages and the handles possessions. You know, we need to listen to the religious text. I think both the Bible and the Quran.
Right.
They are very clear on calm. Let's reason together. Because in reasoning together, we can remake the parliament, which we have now lost. We can remake institution offices, which are now dysfunctional. Because that includes the police. The constitution wanted to separate the police from the executive. But now somehow we returned it. So in reasoning together, we can address all these problems.
Right.
We need to go there. We can always use the military to solve political problems.
All right. Thank you so much. And I think we missed out on this on the Daily Nation. It was on the very last page. It was on this poll that was conducted, which focused on the cost of living, which majority of Kenyans said was the biggest worry for them. Nearly half of Kenyans drawn from both sides of the political divide, it didn't matter, identify the high cost of living experienced in the country as one of the biggest problems that should be urgently addressed by the administration of President William Ruto, according to that opinion poll by Insights for Africa Trends and Insights for Africa TIFA, which shows about 48% of Kenya Kwanza Alliance supporters and 48% of those who back Azimio la Umoja and Kenya Coalition Party identified the high cost of living as their major concern. But that also, the high cost of living, the issue of the cost of living should not be used for political expediency as well. So this is where we are going to wind up on our conversation this morning. And I will still go back to that caricature on the Daily Nation. I think this is quite interesting, and I think we should really ponder on that. This is where we are as a country. Empty plates, that's what we have, empty plates. But these are the doses we're getting twice a week. Maandamano doses and suppression doses. Is that what we need?
No.
Should think about that. It's interesting, right? Hassan Olenado, the National Chairperson of the Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims, that's SUPKEM. Dr. Bernard Mogesa, the CEO of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. Professor Gitile Naituli, lecturer, governance expert, political analyst. And also George Musamali, security and safety consultant. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in this morning to just take us through and make sense of the situation in the country right now. Remember, the third round of protests planned by the opposition is happening today, going by the words of the Azimio la Umoja leader Raila Odinga yesterday, saying that they will continue with their demonstrations as planned and as earlier stated. So we will be waiting to see how the situation looks around the CBD. Is how it just looked on Monday morning, which is basically shops are closed. There is very little activity, but we can't be able to say at this point from Vincent to Edward's side, who's in Kibera, things look quite calm and people are going about their business. We spoke to Ibrahim Karanja, who was at the Chungwa House, that's the ODM headquarters. There's still no word about what is happening, but if we go by what we saw over the past two demonstrations, the protests, we saw the leaders come out quite late in the day, about 2 p.m. That's when they came out, and there was a lot of action that intensified after that. So that's what we'll continue monitoring for you. The Swahili team will be coming up in a moment, and will be taking us through the rest of the day on the situation. And thank you for watching, and I've seen all your comments. Let's continue engaging online. The hashtag is AMLiveNTV. At Zainab Ismail at NTV Kenya. Have yourself a good morning and stay safe. Peace is what we need.